Hi, and welcome back to In My Head. I'm Kelly, and I'm so excited. This is my second episode of my podcast. I just quickly want to say thank you so much. Truly, I am so grateful. I really didn't think in the beginning of my podcast that I was going to get any views, like at all. I thought realistically I may, maybe get like one or two or like four or five because I did send some stuff to my friends, which, hey guys, thank you so much for listening. But I also got a lot of love from people I didn't know. So I just want to give you a big kiss on the forehead. So, mwah, I really appreciate you. And welcome to this week's topic, which is fear. We all have it. Seriously, we're all human. I think this is one of the most common emotions that we all have besides love and hate and maybe a couple other things. But this is a very common emotion that we have, if not every day, right? And I just really wanted to talk about ways to overcome it and ways to defeat it and things that just give you a little maybe boost of my own issues with fear. And hopefully you relate to that. But first, I have a confession to make. Now, I kind of have like a really, really stupid fear. like it's not I don't know. I haven't met anyone else that has this fear besides me and my grandma. and my fear is completely irrational because I have nothing has ever happened to me when it comes to this particular fear. But for my grandma, it has. When I was like 5 or 6 or something like that. I just like vividly remember my grandma was putting me to bed and she was like reading me a bedtime like story. And then she's like, you know what? Let me tell you an actual story about what happened in my life when I was growing up. And I was so excited. I was like, I love hearing my grandmother's stories of when she was growing up because she was probably one of the most adventurous people I've ever met in my life. And my grandma's 90, almost 91 now, and you would never guess that that's what her age is because she has always been this adventurous person, always been this crazy, happy in life person. But to hear my grandmother talk about her one true fear that she's had, like with an animal or a thing or whatever, I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Oh, sure, absolutely, grandma, go ahead. And she's like, I got attacked by a bull and a cow. And I was like, you got attacked by a what, grandma? And she's like, yes. One day, me and my sister, which is my aunt, we one day hopped a fence in our local farm area and we decided to go pet baby calves. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound so bad, right? Well, she's like, and then all of a sudden, out of my left corner of my eye, I see this bull and this big cow charging at me. And her sister had already left. She left her far behind because she didn't say anything to her. And this bull was crazy close to my grandma. So my grandma starts sprinting and she jumps the fence, but the bull had actually hit her in the face. And so did the cow. The cow hit her on her body and she went flying, I guess. And she told me that she also got hit from the fence part. So she scraped her body from the fence and she also has a scar on her body as well. And she has told me this story over and over and over when I started growing up. But that moment when I was little, I was so scared. I didn't sleep for the next 2 hours after that conversation. I just stood up and and looked at the ceiling and going, what if that happens to me? And I created these irrational fear of cows and irrational fear of bulls and stuff like that for the next 2 hours as a little girl. And I said to myself, I am never, ever, ever, ever going into a cow pen. I'm never even touching a cow, let alone going near a cow. I'm not doing anything that has to do with cows. I was convinced that was going to happen to me, so convinced. And I didn't speak a word to my grandma about this, by the way, because I did not want her to feel guilty that she made me afraid of cows, but she definitely did make me afraid of cows. And when I was maybe about 14 or 15, me and my friends, we all lived like on the water at the time. And they were like, "You know what we should do? We should go midnight paddleboarding." And I was like, "Well, that sounds really fun." And we did that all the time over the summer. So we go out to this midnight paddleboarding, and one of my friends says, "Well, we should go rope swinging." And I said, "Okay, that sounds great." Well, right next to the rope swing, there's this little like island thing that you kind of have to like put your paddle boards or boat or whatever up to there before you get to the rope swing that to go into the water. And I was like, well, we was like five of us, and we all put our paddle boards up there. And when we're about to like go off on the rope swing, we hear hooves coming towards our way. Now we think that's normal because there is like this cow area around there, but we don't really see them, nor do we ever interact with them. So it really wasn't a concern. But immediately once I heard hooves, I didn't care if it was a cow, didn't care if it was a horse. God knows if it was someone putting two hooves together and clacking them with their hands or putting them on on YouTube with sound effects just to freak me out. I did not care. I flung myself into the water, grabbed my paddleboard, and hightailed it the hell out of there. I was like, do not play with, I do not give a fuck. It was not something I ever cared about to even question, really, truly. And all of a sudden, when I'm in the middle of the water and I felt safe, I turn around and I see all my friends like about to go on into the water to get their paddle boards, and this herd of cows and two bulls just stampeding towards them. And I was screaming. I was like, get in the water. Like I was just insanely scared at that moment. I knew that these cows were trying to protect maybe calves or something. Who cares? Going to go get a drink of water in the goddamn water. Who knows what they were trying to do, right? But they were charging at my friends. And I was like, guys, this is why I am so serious about cows. This is, you guys have made fun of me for years, but this is exactly the reason. And by the time they all have like paddleboard over to me, their faces just like pale from being scared. The cows are in the water. Like they're like surfacing in the water, and two of them actually like went upstream from the current because the water's just a little too deep for cows to stand truly once they go a little too far. And we paddleboarded to a different cove area just to get away from them. My friends now like were like, "You know what? We believe you. We understand why you're afraid of cows." Granted, it didn't change any of their minds to why they should be afraid of cows, but they're like, "We get it. We're not going to make fun of you anymore. This is a serious thing. If you're really afraid of them like this is completely rational." And it just kind of confirmed with me that I can have those fears when it comes to animals or things that happened, even if it didn't directly happen to me. I'm allowed to have those fears. But on another note, growing up, I now realize that these irrational fears of nothing happening to me with like specifically with cows has drastically changed my impact on how I interact with cows. Like, for example, one of my best friends last year tried to take me to a pumpkin patch, and they had animals. So they had cows and they had giraffes and whatever. They had zebras and turkeys, and you could feed them. You can get like a little container of food and you could put them in the little trough, and it goes through this little like pipe and it feeds the animals, like, so you're not directly hand feeding them. But I was like, yeah, I'm not feeding that cow. You cannot get me to do it. And she did. She got me to push past that fear. She's like, well, Kelly, there's a fence, and the food's going through the tube. You're not going to have this cow interact with you whatsoever. All you have to do is observe it and get close to it. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to call you a bitch. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to be a cow. It's all it's looking for is food. That's all it's here for. And, having that moment and having that instance where I was like, okay, well, I should not really be that afraid. That's totally irrational, and she's completely right. And that's where I took the steps of just going, okay, Cows are not that bad. I even tried dressing up a cow, like, as a cow with my boyfriend for, Halloween, and he was gonna be like a cowboy and stuff. So I'm really trying to push past it and just normalize the fact that, cows aren't really gonna hurt me, and I'm never really gonna come in contact and put myself in any position like my grandmother did where I have to run away from a bull or run away from a cow that's actually gonna hurt me. Like, I can observe the danger around me and be like, I need to get out of a situation if I needed to get out of a situation where my friends did it. And in that moment, maybe that have like got me a little ahead of maybe getting trampled by cows, but realistically, my friends also made it out because they were observant too. So my fear just put me 2 steps ahead. But on that note, fear doesn't always put you 2 steps ahead, and you have to overcome it, or it does become just like shackles on your arms. Like, it's not gonna benefit you fully in the long run. I don't want to be 80 or 90 and talking to my grandkids and going, when I was 15, this happened, so you should be afraid. And I want them to adore cows. Hell, you know what, if my granddaughter has cow print room or has like this little obsession with cows like I had an obsession with pandas, by all means I will genuinely be happy by that. So here's a couple steps on how to defeat fear. It's not just like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps of how you're actually going to defeat fear. It's kind of, it's just up and down. It's never going to be a solidified thing. You're just going to have to do with what you have, and when the time comes to face those certain fears, to maybe remember one of these 2 steps or remember some of this advice that I give you, and try to just use a little bit of it. You don't have to like pull out your phone and go, okay, 1 through 7, she said this and that. No, just try some of these things and it might work for you. And if it doesn't, that's totally normal. It's totally okay. There's so many different ways for us to overcome fear. This is just one of them that I'm saying, or 2 of them, or whatever, for you to be able to even try to overcome certain situations that have worked for me. So, one of the biggest things that I had for when it became to overcome fear was observing things, observing my fear, observing everything that goes around with my fear. And for one, like, okay, let me give you an example. There's a study that was done for people that are like arachnophobias, and not like a normal arachnophobia case. They were all extreme arachnophobia cases. This was like insane. So, one example that I have that is a huge example about how people who observe things that they're afraid of can slowly start defeating that fear. So, the study is that a lot of people who have a over fear of arachnophobia. So it's not just like a common fear of arachnophobia. These people have an extreme case of arachnophobia. And there's about 20 of them. And they put them in a room, each into one individually. And before they put them in the room, they had told them to write down their original fear of the spiders, how they feel, and X, Y, and Z, all these emotions. And then they put the spider in a cage. And when putting them in the cage, they put the people near them. Like, not like the spider was in the cage and the people were near them. They were not close, but they were near them. And these people all had pretty much a very similar reaction, freaking out, hyperventilating. There was even one person that had passed out during the experiment while the spider was just in the cage. And that was the very first test. And then every other day, they would slowly move the tarantula from the lid being open to the tarantula being on the floor to the tarantula being in a handkeeper's hand close to the people to the spider actually being on the people's feet. Like, it was a transition over like a 3-month period, every other day or every week, to have the tarantula be close to them. And every single time that these people were exposed and observed the spider, and then wrote down how they felt afterwards, the less their fear became. And it, like, they still had the fear, right? But they weren't the same reaction from the very beginning. Now, over time, after the 3 months, 90% of the people were actually allowed to have the spider in their hand without freaking out. Now, granted, this is only a study of 20 people, right? Like, we're not examining a whole big room of people full of arachnophobia. This was literally just simple 20 people. But it shows, like, the extreme length of us exposing ourselves, pushing past that fear, knowing that the very first day of having that fear is not going to be like the 3 month later period. Now, it's going to maybe take some time depending how bad your fears are, but a month, 2 months later, it's not going to be as bad as it first started. And these people were actually able to now more commonly live their lives without having the fears of spiders. Because if I told you the facts about how many spiders are in the vicinity of you right now, you also would have a fear of arachnophobia. Like, you'd also very much genuinely have a fear of spiders. It is a very common fear to have. That's why I named it. But truly, if we expose ourselves to the fear and expose ourselves to those objects, it's not going to be it's not going to be controlling a certain part of your life anymore. I mean, hell, now some of these people have even said they can go camping. They can go into certain areas or express Halloween where there's spiders everywhere. Like, it's just not as bad anymore for them. They can normalize the fact that they do still have it and it's never going to be completely over it, but they're able to overcome the huge part of the fear that they initially had. So for me, I'm going to try as much as possible to never have this fear of cows be so overwhelming. I still do. I'm still probably most likely going to have an extreme version of it in the future with like certain instances, but I don't want it to be where I can't enjoy myself because there's a cow like standing in the pastures right by me as I'm trying to go on a hike or something. So, next time you, or even like write down right now, or think about it in your head if you want to. What is like the number one thing that you're afraid of? And it's not like, oh, you know, I feel like my what I'm afraid of is stupid. Just even say it out loud. Say it to your friend if you're both listening to the podcast. Write it down in your journal. Text your friend, tell them what you're afraid of, and just right now acknowledge the fact that you're afraid of this. This may be a big problem now, but I'm really trying to make sure that I handle this now, and in the future, my kids aren't laughing at me, or in the future, it doesn't stop me from being the badass that I'm supposed to be, right? So let's just acknowledge it right now together, right? I'm afraid of cows. I don't know what you're afraid of. You're probably your fear is a lot more normalized than mine. But whatever you're afraid of, give yourself a little bit of grace. Give yourself a little bit of leeway. It's totally okay. You're totally going to be fine. It's not going to kill you. You're going to be amazing. You're going to overcome this fear. And if not you overcome this fear, I'm sure so many people around you that love you and want to help you will help you overcome this fear. Or if not, go seek some guidance. Help somebody that you look up to, or a therapist, or somebody that maybe a psychologist, something that can help you through that. But let's just one right here acknowledge it and let's move forward. So one of the biggest things that have stuck with me since I was little was, what do you do when you are afraid but you still have to do something? You still stuck to your guns and you're like, "Oh shit, like I'm so afraid but I still have to do this." Like, this is something I committed myself to and so many people were looking up to me. Like, for example, I've been a cross country runner for 8 years. And when I went to high school, I had been trained already for a while, and I was sponsored by Nike for a little bit, not a long time, but I was a little bit. And I had a national run where I decided to compete in, and I got, time trialed and whatever, and I actually made it. And if anyone knows like with runners, one of the biggest things is McFarland. And I realized that I had to race against this girl from McFarland who most likely has a lot of pressure just like I do, but so much more pressure on her. And I was so scared. I didn't know I had to until I got to the starting line. And my coach, before we went, was like hyping me up, talking to me about what I need to do in this race. It's, a 3.5, 4 mile race, and it's mostly uphill. Where do I play to my strengths? Where do I do this? Give me some strategy, right? So, what my coach had told me, she's like, she looked at me in the eye and she's like, I know you're so scared. I did not want to tell you. And I was like, that the McFarland girl was there. And I kind of got pissed off at that originally. I was like, I could have prepared for this mentally. And she's like, no, because I know you would have been so scared. You wouldn't even had trained for you to be able to do this. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. So for her, she told me, just do it afraid. Do it afraid. You're going to have to do it anyway. You're going to have to run it anyway. She's like, the only way that you're going to have a win in your head is if you still do it like we trained. Who cares if you win or lose? You're here. You're one of the best runners. Just try. And she's like, I'm going to be proud of you regardless. What is the worst is going to happen, right? You end up in dead last. She's like, I don't care. Do it afraid, and I'll be proud of you anyways. And I think that by choosing to do that, by choosing to take action and saying, you know what, I've been training for this, I can do it. If I'm not great, whatever, I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for my time trial. I'm doing it to actually run with some of the best people in the state. So if I can do that, I'm putting myself in a position with best people. And I think that's the same exact thing that you should be doing too. If you're afraid of being against the best, and you're afraid of pushing yourself to an standard that you've never been before. You're like, oh, I don't feel like I'm deserving of this. This is so scary. This is the biggest fear I've ever had in my life because what does this make me? I can't do this. And to push yourself past that and say, you know what? I got this. I may not win, but it's a win if I even try. And I actually ended up placing third, and I was a minute away from her. She was way, way further. So having the expectation to be like her, push my and say I'm afraid, but I'm gonna keep going, allowed me to push myself past the regular standards that I placed on myself. And I try to have that same mindset every day. I'm gonna be afraid. I'm gonna have fear in my life. It's so unavoidable now. Like even if you're in your bed and you do nothing and you watch TV, there's still fear. It's fear is all around us. It is an avoidable, unescapable concept. But this one motivation, this one thing where it says do it afraid makes so much sense to me. And if it's hard for you and you fear small things which to you are big things, or big things to you that are small things, or just like going in a room and talking to somebody that you have to go in and talk to, going and trying clothes that you've never tried on before, you know, dyeing your hair a different color, talking to a girl for the first time, doing so many different things that cause fear in so many different aspects of our lives. Having this concept, do it afraid, by choosing to face and take a part of you and having to undermine fear's power and holding yourself to a standard of fear does not control my overall happiness, even though it's going to be there when I'm doing it anyway and I don't do it, so might as well do it. It allows you to kind of almost free yourself and give you a little bit more confidence to where the fear isn't the biggest part of your life. So just try it. I promise you, if you just stick it to your head and you can't think of any other positive thing to tell yourself, just say, do it afraid. Fear is going to be there if I don't do it, so try to just do it anyway. And that is my only two things that I have to tell you when it comes to being fearful or overcoming or defeating fear. I am in no way somebody who can give you a lot of, you know, encouraging things and a lot of like, oh, I know exactly how to do it. I don't. I'm learning just as much as you're learning to be able to calm those everyday fears. I have a huge fear of what it feels like growing up, or doing just simple tasks of getting myself sometimes to the gym. There's so many different things that I'm afraid of, but I'm still trying to overcome those concepts by just saying, okay, observing it, I'm acknowledging it, I'm writing it down, I'm saying, okay, in the future, Kelly, I don't want to see that be or have that fear be a concept of my life. And there are people that have entered my life that have caused me to have new fears too, as well, which when those do happen, training myself to acknowledge the current fears that I have and observing those current fears allows me, when fears do come, saying, okay, wait, this is something I'm afraid of, immediately being able to be like, I am afraid of this. This is something that could cause me emotional harm, maybe physical harm, and I need to be aware of that immediately. And then being like, okay, do it afraid anyway. Like for me, one of the biggest fears that I had was falling in love and falling in love again. And being able to be with somebody where the reason why I'm now afraid is because I do feel so in love. And that could be the same thing for anyone. Like, fear sometimes could be a positive impact in the way you feel for somebody and being like, I'm so afraid of losing you. And that's okay. That's a part of love. But acknowledging the fact could also make you understand, okay, wait, I do love this person so much. So practice, please, please practice when it comes to this week. It doesn't have to be forever, but I mean, you still should practice this forever. But practice this week and start implementing this into your life. Acknowledge and then observe, and then come up with a plan on how you're going to tackle the certain fear slowly. And then do it afraid. Do things afraid, flip it around, flip the fear around, and just say, I can do this. I bet other people have done this. Other people have failed. I may fail, but who cares? That means that's okay. I can still try it again tomorrow. I can still do it afraid. I can still try to push past this fear, and maybe one day this won't be a fear for me anymore. And you don't want to have a bag of fear on your shoulders or in your hand. You want to be that boss that goes in any room or any situation and says, I'm not afraid anymore. I have this. I got this. This is something that won't control me, because guess what? I overcame it. Now, I don't know when I'll overcome fear of cows per se, but I think it does start with maybe getting a cow onesie, and I may force my boyfriend or my best friend to get a matching one, because if I'm afraid of cows and I see them in a cow onesie, maybe I'll feel less afraid. This is me spitballing, by the way. And I think that's where it comes with fear too, as well, in small instances like me being afraid of cows. Just coming up with silly things or things to like accommodate with the stuff with good stuff in your life. You're like, okay, well, maybe if my friend dresses up as a clown, or my friend has spiders or snakes, maybe I'll like them a little more. It's like just coming up with those concepts. But I'm proud of you. I hope you just take this lesson and you really learn, and I hope that you do overcome your fears, and if not, little by little, because every little time you overcome your fear is a win. It's a small win, but celebrate that win. And once again, my name is Kelly, and this was In My Head. I am so, so, so grateful for you to listen to this podcast, and please tune in next Friday for all of these amazing topics that we have, and to gain all these friends and conversation. And yes, much love. Big kiss on the forehead. Mwah. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.